hope is really lost that JJ and Tylee will be found alive. Confirmation from family members that it was their remains that were recovered in the back of the man who married their mother, the backyard of his home out in Salem, Idaho. Well, tonight, Chanley Painter, Court TV legal correspondent, is live in Idaho for us. She joins us now to set the scene on what's happening out there. Chanley, great to see you. First of all, you know, the background looks the same, sort of, but I know you're not in the same place tonight as you were last night. Where are you and what's going to happen tonight?
Well, Vinny, I'm standing in a large field in Idaho Falls, Idaho. It's about 30 minutes south of where we were last night, the scene of Chad Daybell's home where those child remains were recovered. Now, tonight, this is the place of a community vigil. In just a couple of hours, several hundred people are expected to gather here in this open field and honor the lives of Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. This is a community still reeling from what has happened over the last several days. We know that early Tuesday morning, a search warrant was executed at Chad Daybell's home, that the authorities were there for several hours, ended up taking him into custody and announcing that human remains were located in his backyard. That led to 2 felony counts of concealment or destruction of evidence for Chad Daybell. He's being held on $1 million bail there in the Fremont County Jail. So after all of this has happened, the family has confirmed that those 2 remains found at Chad Daybell's property were that of Tylee and JJ. That's not coming from official sources just yet because autopsies are still pending in a county quite far away, several hours away, Ada County, where Boise, Idaho is. So that's pending, but now tonight, the community has decided to come together to honor their lives for the first time this week.
And Chanley, I know you've been speaking to a lot of folks on the ground out there, including a neighbor of Chad Daybell. Let's take a listen to what he said, because the observations of neighbors, to me, very revealing about people. Let's take a listen.
I felt bad, but I felt if the man has done something wrong, he deserves to have a chance to, you know, prove himself. And if he's done this with children, I don't like that idea, you know. And I hope that they find the truth there.
So Chanley, that's one of the neighbors of Chad Daybell, and a couple things strike me about what he's saying. You know, number one, you can see that he's been impacted by this. The other part of it, though, is that, hey, if in fact he gets charged with this, he'll have his opportunity in a court of law and an opportunity. And to me, that's the open-mindedness, the seeking the truth that is so pure and part of our system. Very striking. To me, at least, Chanley.
Yes, in fact, I sat down with him today. Overall, his tone was of that manner. He had a front row seat up close to Chad Daybell and his family for the last 7 years. Now, that was Boyd Price. He was born and raised in that area. He's lived there his whole life on that intersection. We were live there yesterday. His extended family lives around that area. In fact, the Daybells bought the home from Boyd's aunt and uncle 7 years ago. He remembers when they moved in with Chad and Tammy and their children to that home. He said they were good neighbors that they kept to themselves. He remembers Chad coming over and asking him about some pigeons that Chad wanted at his house. He also, Vinny, expounded on the moment that Tammy Daybell, Chad's first wife, was allegedly shot at with what she thought were paintballs back in October, 10 days before she actually passed away. He said that was really the beginning of what has been a strange and traumatic period for the entire community there in Salem, Idaho. But he said, look, the Daybells are still my neighbors. His children still live in his home and across the street. So he also spoke about what it's like to sort of move on, but also considering Chad Daybell's children. Let's take a listen to that.
we're just going to have to bond together, and I hope that we can work together and help the Tammy and Chad's children who are here still to work through it, and maybe that'll help everybody else, you know.
You know, Mr. Boyd he's a wonderful guy. He has a wonderful family. We've gotten to know him over the last couple of days we've been there. And you know, his hope in restoring that community, even after what's happened over the last several months and especially this week, you know, he told me that they had always hoped that the children would be recovered. He just didn't want it to happen a few yards from his home. But he has hope that this community will return to what it was before and be able to process this and move on, Vinny.
You know, in that conversation where you mentioned the paintball incident, and let's go back in time a little bit. Tammy Daybell, before she dies in the house, someone shoots at her like a week beforehand with paintballs in her driveway. Now, when I first heard that, I had no perspective of where they lived and what type of neighborhood it was. So now, for us, Chandler, kind of put that together because you're walking that neighborhood. How strange and out of place would it seem to be for someone in their driveway in that neighborhood to be shot at with paintballs?
Vinny, we were standing on Salem Highway yesterday. You were able to see, our viewers were able to see how much traffic is on that road every day, all day. And Tammy was in the front driveway where we were, right behind where I was standing yesterday when this happened. She said, she posted on the neighborhood Facebook page, and there's neighbors all over surrounding their house as well, that some masked man shot what she thought were paintball pellets at her at that time. And the whole neighborhood responded. Boyd goes on to tell me that they were out looking through sheds and barns to find this dangerous person who could have done this to Tammy Daybell, who he says is rarely even out of her house. She's always inside and stays to herself. And it was so strange because nothing like that ever happens there in Salem, Idaho. And he would have said he would have never imagined in a million years that this happened in his backyard.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, from your conversation with him, the way he is, the way neighbors are looking out for each other, the type of place that it is, that is just so out of place, so out of the ordinary. So you have that incident, then Tammy Daybell dies, and then you've got the search and this trip to Hawaii in between. I've got to think for these folks who are good people in that neighborhood, this is so out of the ordinary, this entire chain of bizarre events.
It is. This is a community, and he explained it to me today. They're bonded together by their love of farming, family, and religion. He said that's what ties us all together. His extended family is his neighbors, as well as Chad Daybell and his children surround there as well. Nothing like this ever happens, and he said it just left them scratching their head. And ever since that incident with Tammy, with the paintball incident, and then her death suspiciously, I think it was 10 days later, nothing has ever seemed right. And he just kept wondering, what is happening? What has Chad got himself into? Every time they would learn a new detail along this really surreal story happening out of their Price Corner is what that intersection is called, Vinny.
Did he give any other indication? Was there, so his family sells the home to Chad Daybell and his family. A family comes in and, you welcome them to your neighborhood. They've got children and, you may have children and everyone's kind of looking out for each other. You're part of this community. Did he say that there was ever a change in what he noticed from Chad Daybell? Was there a point where something, he's not acting the same way or he's not around? Was there anything like that?
At first, when they were neighbors and Tammy was still alive, they kept to themselves. Nothing stood out to him about Chad Daybell. He did have some animals and things, but it wasn't a farm like you see the other neighbors farming and growing crops and whatnot. But after the death of Tammy, and Chad was no longer at the home. And then in January, when police showed up to search the property, but trying to find evidence about Tammy Daybell's suspicious death, he said that's really set off alarm bells. He also told me, Vinny, that 2 weeks after Tammy Daybell died, he knew, because it's a small, close-knit community, word travels fast, that Chad Daybell had already remarried. He said that set off alarm bells, left him scratching his head, and he's thinking, what has Chad gotten himself into? And then when he learns that Chad has stepchildren and that they are missing, he said it just went downhill from there the several months following.
Did he indicate that he ever saw Lori and the kids at the house?
No, he never saw Lori or her kids at the house, because when Chad returned from Hawaii after Lori Vallow was arrested, extradited back here from Hawaii, he said that Chad returned to the house, but he rarely, if ever, saw Chad. He just stayed in his home most of the time until this week when another search was conducted on his property, and then Chad was taken into custody.
All right, let's get back now inside the courtroom. They're both locked up. What's coming up? Let's kind of set the docket here on who's in court and when they're in court.
Well, we both now have charges for Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell, but in different counties. So they each have charges pending and preliminary hearings pending coming up as well. So we can put it up on the screen exactly what is coming up. For Chad Daybell first, his preliminary hearing on his 2 felony counts is July 1st and 2nd. It's in the 7th Judicial District of Fremont County, of course, in front of Judge Edens as of now. And then for Lori, her preliminary hearing, she faces 2 felony counts of child abandonment. Among other charges is July 9th and 10th, 7th Judicial District of Madison County with Judge Michelle Mallard. Now, Vinny, this is all up in the air. Pending autopsy results, identification results, processing of the evidence taken from the 2-day search of Chad Daybell's home. These charges, as the prosecutor indicated on Wednesday, could be upgraded. These preliminary hearings could be moved. It's all up in the air as of right now.
All right, Shanley Painter and our team on the ground in Idaho, covering this story like no one else. When we come back, we're going to take a look. Shanley earlier today visited Lori Vallow Daybell's old neighborhood. We'll take a look at that when we return.